tech support, so we have to thank you for the tech support that you provide for our class. Glad you lost without it.
Pleasure.
Okay, so Tevilas Keilim is actually based on a pasuk. We have an asmachta in a pasuk. So there are some opinions that maintain that Tevilas Keilim is mid'oraisa. It's from the Torah, and therefore this is very much relevant because we have klolim, we have certain principles with which we operate in halacha. When you have a safek d'Rabbanan, bless you, when you have a doubt about a situation, it's rabbinic, we usually go on the lenient side. But if it's a doubt on something that's mid'oraisa, we're machmir. Safek d'Oraisa l'chumra, safek d'Rabbanan l'kula. So this is one example. Another example is that a child is nemon on something that's only nisud d'Rabbanan, something that's only rabbinic. We can entrust a child who's of responsible age to do something. But when it comes to something that's from the Torah, we don't entrust a child under Barabas mitzvah for something because it's of greater severity, because it's min haTorah. So these are some of the examples of where it would make a difference, right? So that's why we're saying it's an asmach. It's based on a pasuk. Even though the laws of Tevilas Keilim are written together with the laws about kashering vessels in the with the Klei Midyan. The mitzvah of Tevilas Keilim is not dependent on kashering the vessels. Even brand new vessels that are purchased from a non-Jew, they were never used. They're brand new out of the box, factory sealed, so to speak, right? They still need Tevilah. In other words, to say the laws of Tevilah are separate from the laws of kashering. It happens to be that if you have a vessel that's not kosher, the proper order is to first kosherize the vessel and then toivel it. But if you have a brand new vessel, the mitzvah of Tevilah is still in place. It still has to be done, and therefore it's important to keep that in mind. And additionally, I want to reconjure our memory. Something that I brought up last time that we see from here, that the way the I would say the extreme delicacy and the importance that the Torah places on the food that is prepared for us, that besides for the fact that all the ingredients have to be kosher and the vessels have to be kosher, the vessels also have to undergo tevilah so that they can have the tara, so to speak, the tara to be used to prepare food for befitting for a Jewish soul. Gives us a great glimpse into the depths of this beautiful mitzvah. Now, even though there are some opinions that say that the main mitzvah of Tevilas Keilim was only rabbinic, but the drasha and the drasha that we learn now from it, Eina Elo asmachta is just an asmachta. Yes? Most poskim, and he brings down here the Rashba, the Ritzvo, the Ran, the Meiri, and the Rambam, yes? That it's min haTorah. So if it's min haTorah, therefore we have a situation. In other words, can I send a child under Barabas mitzvah to the mikvah and say, here, can you toivel these vessels for me? The answer is no. You can have a child do it under Barabas mitzvah if there's an adult watching. Yes? But to send the children alone, they're not entrusted for that. Asmachta means it's like leaning on a pasuk. Like asmachta means to lean on. There's a pasuk that alludes to it. Doesn't directly say it outright, but alludes to it, and therefore it has a sheish min haTorah. Sure. Every time I learn this halacha, I've been teaching Baruch Hashem for 25 years approximately, and every year I chaz this nice. I remember when I was about 7 years old, my mother, blessed memory, sent my sister and I, she lived in New York, she sent us to a grocery store to buy some groceries. We lived in Monsey then, and it was a book. And she 8 years ago. And she put in her pocket. My sister was older, so she put in her pocket, and then she couldn't find it. She lost it. She was really worried, like, oh my gosh, what happened to my money? Whatnot. Like, child mind. It wasn't like a huge sum of money, but still, I lose it. So we were searching for it, and it was a gas station, like right across the street from the grocery store. And we found it on the floor there, the gas station. It was like, I remember the moment. Anyway, so I'm just saying. So you see, a child's entrusted to a certain degree. Yes. So if a child is very responsible, you might send $50 in their pocket to return to a neighbor. But you're probably not going to send $1,000. You know what I mean? There's a limit to how much responsibility you're going to give the child because they're a child. So it's a concept. So when it comes to something in Torah says we cannot entrust a child. It's only rabbinic. If they're responsible, we can entrust them. Okay. Now we get to mysticism with the th. Mysticism is that this idea that you're allowed to use a vessel before Tevilah, before Tevilah. It's not true. Also, one's not allowed to use a vessel before Tevilah, even on a temporary basis. This Isser is rabbinic in nature. Now, even though the Tevilah, according to most opinions, is Minat Torah, the usage of a vessel, it's not toivel, is a rabbinic prohibition. Here we have a very, very relevant halacha. I mean, very practical. That if somebody had used a vessel that was brand new, did not toivel it, and cooked kosher food in it, the food still may be eaten, even though what he did was not proper, shouldn't have done it, the food still may be eaten. Therefore, one's allowed to leave a vessel, a brand new vessel in one's home that's not yet toivel, and we don't have to be concerned, maybe you're going to come to use it. Why? Because even if someone did use it, the food would still be kosher. There's another thing, by the way, I like to say with a little bit of humor, this is the cure for Jewish neurosis. We see halacha is very clear. There's a certain degree of what we have to be concerned about, and after that, we don't have to worry. Halacha says something that if a mistake happened, it will still be kosher. We don't have to worry. You can leave it in the house unguarded. Doesn't need to have a special sign of don't use it. Or I mean, you could let people know not to use it, but you don't have to be so worried, so to speak. Because if they did use it, it would still kosher. Now, halacha zayin gets to where you mentioned. You have a very large vessel. It doesn't fit into the mikvah. There's no heter to use without toiveling. Even if the vessel was used 100 times without tevilah, there still exists the responsibility to toivel it, but also was not allowed to use it. Look further in Sifnun Beis. Tevilas Keilim. We're going to learn about toiveling electronic vessels, which is the whole thing for itself. And Jewish people defy gravity. They live higher than nature. Okay, so now what do you do? Let's still talk about this. Now we just mentioned this halacha. Let's bring it down into practical application, so to speak. So first of all, large factory. Some of the vessels in these factories could be the size of this room. So they're not going to a mikvah. I mean, it's just not possible. So there's a few things to mention here. First of all, there's a halacha that if a Jew finished the vessel, meaning if the vessel was unusable, let's say the vessel had a large hole on the bottom. You cannot cook in a vessel, you cannot use a vessel with a large hole in the bottom. All the contents are going to drain out, right? There's no cap. So if there was a large hole welded in the vessel, and then a craftsman came and resoldered it and smoothed it out and made it sealed, and if that craftsman was a Jew, that'd be considered like the vessel was made by a Jew. That's one way to deal with this issue of a large vessel which cannot go to the mikveh. It's made by a Jew, then you don't have a problem. Another way to deal with this would be if the vessel was being purchased by a brand new vessel being purchased by a Jew, you can, if it's being fabricated just for the Jew, meaning it wasn't yet made, so then you prepaid for it, and there's certain halacha considerations that have to be done by the contract, where what's known as the uman is not kind of a shevach kli that the person's making is not going to be acquiring it through making it. They're going to be just a day laborer, so to speak. Then that's another way to do it. But if that's not possible, you're buying already a finished vessel. A second one would be, let's say you take you go to a craftsman, you say, make me this vessel. But you already prepay for all the metal and all the vessels, so you already own the vessel before it's made. So it's made as a Jewish vessel. That's another way to do it. And a third way to deal with this is, there's a third heter, which is used, I would say, in the world of industrial manufacturing. That's from the Ksav Sefer, the son of the Chassam Sefer. He said that klei mischar, vessels used to produce food that are not meant to serve directly to the end user. They're producing food that's meant for sale. Industrial, like for example, you make industrial ingredients, you make flavors, yes? You don't eat those directly. Those are just used as ingredients going to other foods. It's not like directly serving food that's edible at this moment. That's considered to be vessels used for business, and that's not included in what the Torah in Parshas Klei Midian is speaking about Klei Mischar, of Klei Suda. It's speaking about there about vessels used for Suda to serve directly from there, right? This is a whole new get. It's a new category. It's Klei Mischar, it's business. And that's a heter as well. So when it comes to caterers, by the way, that use sheet pans, so there it's very much easy to actually to toivel, and you don't really have the heter of Klei Mischar because they serve directly to the end user. There you have to toivel the vessels. There's a fourth option to get around this issue, but it's only mutar b'di'evet if you have no other choice, and that is to either gift or sell the vessel to a non-Jew. If it's a brand new vessel, it's kosher. That's in control of the Jew, but it's not owned by the Jew. The chivot tefillah is only if the vessel is owned by everybody. This is only mutar b'di'evet because we're not supposed to be mafsid a bracha b'yadayim. We're not supposed to forego an opportunity to make a bracha, right? So during COVID, when I don't know, the various considerations, the Rabbanim were a little bit more open about this heter because we were much more limited option. But in general, we try and avoid this. This heter also comes into play, by the way, when it comes to certain electronic vessels. I'll explain. I'm going to give you a sneak preview, even though we're going to learn about the end of the halacha, but I can't hold myself in. What can I do? So you have two different types. You have a hot water urn that has a receptacle, yes, has a receptacle for the plug, and then you have the plug. So they have, all of them have warning signs. Do not immerse in water, risk shock and all kinds of tropical illnesses, God forbid, or things like that. And they give all the warnings. But the Jewish people do it anyways. And they dry it out for 3 days upside down and it's fine. Because Jewish people defy gravity. So that's how you handle the hot water urns. Or they have hot water urns that are manufactured by Jewish companies, and therefore you don't have that issue. If it comes with a proper hashgacha, and it's being sold by a Jewish manufacturer throughout, then according to all opinions, that's not a problem. It does not need Tevilah. But what about if you also have coffee? If you have coffee, you have these electronic vessels that have they have these computer motherboards. You dunk them in the mikvah, it's finished. It's good for the garbage. You cannot. It's not going to get waterlogged, and they start showing all kinds of numbers that are incomprehensible. So that's not going to work. So with an electronic motherboard, then taka, you don't have any other eitzah. Then the Rabbanim say in such a case, then most likely the best opportunity would be for you to gift it or sell it to a non-Jew and then borrow it back. And there's another consideration, because it's plugged into the ground, it's considered to be mechuba lakarka. So there's a few reasons why that would be permissible, but that's only used when we literally have no other choice. When it comes to something like a hot water, and it's possible to do it. Jewish people have been doing it for centuries. Not centuries, but for many years, decades, yes.
You said it.
Mechuba lakarka, it's not makabel tumah. If it's connected to the ground, it's not going to receive tumah. We don't rely on that by itself. I'm just saying, because it's a situation where they have no other choice, and the gifting to a non-Jew, this is another consideration. Yeah.
But what does it mean it's into the ground?
I mean, if it's the only way to work it is by plugging into the ground. It's considered connected to the ground. It's not like a vessel which doesn't have to be plugged in.
The example, so basically, when you were saying doesn't make the food not kosher, so
Correct.
whatever.
As long as the vessel is kosher.
Yeah. Does that mean like you can always total something, like if you realize later on they never totaled something 3
Right.
years ago?
Yes,
But-
you can
and
always
then-
do that. You
if
can always
you're-
make up for that.
Okay, if you're ever not sure, like she's just total with something that you're sure, so you don't make a bracha. Like,
So then if you're not sure, there's two ways to go about this. If you only have that vessel you're not sure about, then you toivel without a bracha. Because when in doubt, leave out the bracha. But if you're not sure and you have something else that has to be toiveled with a bracha, let's say you also have a metal mug that has to be toiveled, then it's better to toivel both at the same time. When you make the bracha on the metal, have in mind for that. So that way it's getting the bracha without any suffix. Ceramic is like pottery. I don't think ceramic is not mechuyev b'tefillah. We're going to learn about that. That's as long as it's not glazed in glass. Let me just explain. That's a good question. So I'm going to explain that as well. So ceramic by itself, cheres b'chlal, does not need tefillah. As wood also does not need tefillah. We're going to learn about that in a moment. The classical materials that need tefillah are metal and glass And we say that plastic just is a hiddur to do so without a bracha. The plastic materials. Because if you look in the psukim, it mentions metals. Aluminum is a new type of metal that we didn't have at the time of Chazal, the psukim, but it's also metal. And the reason why glass is like metal is because there's similar properties to metal. Just like metal, you can melt down, glass you can crush and refire up and turn it back into glass. But how to understand the application of the halacha can change. Because when the Chazal said that cheres, earthenware, does not need tevilah, it's talking about pure earthenware. But today when they sell you earthenware vessels, sometimes they're actually glazed with glass. And since the glaze would be what the food touches, then it would be mechuyev tevilah. Now, how do you know if it's glazed with glass or not? That's why they make websites. So the website, they have what's known as a spec sheet. They'll give you the details, the properties of this vessel. Today, you can find out every piece of information about everything and anything. You want to know what it's like, so you ask for, you go on the website, you want to know the properties, you want to know what it's made from. It'll give you a detailed analysis. If it's not made from glass, then there's no chiyuv of tevilah. If it is made from glass, there is a chiyuv of tevilah. Now, furthermore, if you go to paint the pottery, like people like my wife, creative people, they go to make pottery. So there you don't have to tevel either, because you're getting a piece of clay, you're buying it, yes, and then you make it. Even if they glaze it later, but it's already you paid for it, it's your vessel, and it's already a Jewish vessel. There's no chiyuv with them, because it was made a vessel in the hands of a Jew. If you buy a painted pottery that was pre-made by a non-Jew and it's glazed with glass, you would need to tevel it. But you have to verify whether or not it's glazed with glass.
Wait, so like a mug, do you have to even total mugs?
Generally speaking, if it's not glazed with glass, no. Depends on if it's glazed with glass or not. If you're not sure, then tevel without a bracha.
Okay. This happened to me. I totaled like a mug, and then after I like put the bracha on it, and then I came home and I realized there was a sticker on the bottom.
Then you re-tevel without a bracha. Now the only exception to that is but since you brought up the question, I'm going to share another point with you. I remember my mother was European, and she had a very fine taste. She really understood the quality of products, and she taught me how to shop or whatever. Not that I like to shop. Men don't like shopping, by the way, in case you don't know. But she taught me to understand the quality of something. She really had a taste for that. So there's a thing known as a Lennox dish. So there, when it comes to a Lennox dish, the sticker is like the insignia on the Rolls Royce. It's the chashivas. Why are you paying an extra few $100,000 for the vehicle? You got the insignia in the front. So there, the sticker of the Lennox dish is going to cost a little bit more. It's part of the chashivas of the vessel. Therefore, it's bottled to the vessel, and therefore you don't have to remove it when you toivel, because that's the chashivas of the vessel. It's serving the vessel. Mashenki, in a regular vessel, it says target $2.99 or $5.99. That's not the chashivas of the vessel. That you don't want your friend to see. That you want to take off the glue. So it's different. So it depends. Most stickers want to be removed unless the sticker that is part of the beauty and the, so to speak, the chashivas of the vessel. See, it's fascinating how Allah will use it, right? If it's part of the chashivas of the vessel, it's bottled to the vessel. Okay, halacha ches. Not all vessels that are acquired from a non-Jew are responsible to tevel. The obligation to tevel are dependent on the following details. The type of material, the raw material it's made from, yes. The usage of the vessel also will determine whether or not it needs tevilah. For example, a hammer made out of metal. It belongs in the shop downstairs, right, by the workbench. You don't really use hammer to prepare food, therefore it doesn't need to be tevel. The same would be with a saw made from metal. Okay. If the vessel was purchased from a non-Jew, and the fourth qualification, all these qualifications have to be met, that the vessel was manufactured by a non-Jew, but not only that, but it's actually became acquired by a Jew. If the vessel is still owned by a non-Jew, for example, let's say I'm giving a hashgacha on a factory, the owner is a non-Jew, all the vessels are kosher, yes, and we have meshkichim checking, whatever. There's no chiv of Tevilas Keilim there, because the vessels are owned by a non-Jew. Only once it becomes ushered into the Jewish nation to a Jewish person is there a chiv of Tevilah. Okay, so now what we're doing in the next few halachas, we're going to break down the type of materials that would create an obligation for chiv of tefillah, and then we're going to talk about usage. And by the way, when it comes to usage, there are some very fascinating discussions ensue. And again, I cannot hold myself back. I'm going to share with you, give you a glimpse preview. I'll take your question in a moment. What about scissors? You go to Staples, you buy a pair of scissors. Yes, they're meant to cut paper. But if you really like those scissors, you might decide to use them to clean your chicken. They become chicken scissors. That would depend. If you're using them as chicken scissors, that's already considered to be clay soda, you would need to have a chiv of tevilah. If you're just using them for cutting the paper, then there's no chiv of tevilah. Yes, you see the other question.
When you're saying like the diabetes, you could gift it or sell it to a non-Jew.
Yes.
How does that work? You can tell the non-Jew like I'm giving this to you, but I'm gonna use it. Like it's
You
like
say, I'm going to gift it to you, and they should pick it up. I need to borrow it back from you.
okay. Like aren't you
Or they
technically
can buy it from you. You could tell them, I'm going to sell it to you for $1. It's yours to own, but I need to use it. And you let them pick it up and continue.
okay, and also with the scissors, like if you have scissors that are paper scissors, you don't title them. If, like one day it's like you need to get ready for Shabbos and you can't find your chicken scissors, can you use the paper scissors?
You can use them because you didn't designate it for that purpose.
Okay.
But if you intend on using it that way, then you should title it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Two questions. One else is same question as the chicken scissors on the hammer and the coconut.
So again, it does happen, right? So if you get coconuts, you need to smash open the coconut.
Have experience with this side?
Yes, and that's true. That, by the way, that's also negated to Shabbos because a hammer is a klisha malachta le'isser, but the tzorach kufa mekayma, you're allowed to use it. So you're allowed to use a hammer to smash open a coconut on Shabbos because that's considered for food use. It's a permissible use. So then it wouldn't need a tevilah because you're not designating the hammer for that purpose. But if you're gonna have a special hammer, let's say you're in the business of making coconut water and if you're gonna designate it, then you would need the title. Watch this.
You were talking about you mentioned the word factories, either way, for like big places where like they put out an industrial level of food.
Yeah.
You said it's not like a Jewish place, you don't need to title it.
I'm saying an even greater point that if it's an industrial level factory, even if the owner is Jewish, there's an opinion known as the Ksav Sefer, who was the son of the Chassam Sefer, who said that because the entire purpose of this factory is to manufacture ingredients for business purposes only, not for clay soda, not to actually serve to eat at this moment, therefore it's not considered to be required to toivel. Because the Sukkim speak about clay soda, and this is a different get, this is a different category, it's a whole different product, it's a business. That's the rationale.
If you have a vessel that's really, really big, how would that be titled?
So the answer to that is that usually it's not possible to do that, so that we go with a few other options. One option would be for a craftsman, once the vessel is owned by a Jew, for a craftsman to make the vessel unusable. For example, to weld a hole in it. You make a hole in the size of a grapefruit in a vessel that doesn't have a way to close. The vessel's unusable. You cannot cook in that vessel. You cannot put liquid in that vessel. It's unusable. And then you hire a craftsman to seal it up and then to smooth it out. So then it's considered halachically that it was made in the hand of a Jew. That is a much more practical way of doing things.
Does it have to be like a Shomer Shabbos Jew?
No, it has to be a Jew. No, it has to be owned by a Jew. Even if the craftsman is a non-Jew, it doesn't matter. If it's owned, if it was made when it was owned by a Jew. The same question could be about an electronic vessel. Now, when we speak about Maisa Uman, means something that an average person does not know how to do. So just like unscrewing a few things, let's say you have an electronic vessel, and you don't want to gift it to a non-Jew. So again, that doesn't help. But if you have someone who's very handy, they're like one of these tech whizzes or these like electronic whizzes, they take apart the entire machine and re-put it back together. That's a Maisa Uman that would also be considered to be manufactured by a Jew. But it should be a Maisa Uman that a person who's known to have that skill set, so to speak. Yes, then it would apply. Yeah.
With electric vessels, can you just like sometimes you can remove like not even just the screwing, just how the thing is made. Like if you're able to total parts of it, Does that count? And like hard.
So the answer is as follows, that I'm going to give you an example. When you buy a sandwich maker, there's two different types that I'm aware of. There's some that are all one piece. Those are not what I would call friendly for the Jewish people. Then they have other ones that have removable plates, that the plates clip in and out. Now, because the food is designed only to touch the plates, the chiv of tevila is only on the plates. So you remove the plates, and those are not electronic, by the way, they just clip in and out. And then you put them in the mikveh, dry them, and you're good to go. But if you have it all as one piece, then the whole thing has to be toivel, then it's a little bit more complex. Then you go through the idea, dry it out for 3 days, that whole thing, and then you say a few prayers, and it's all good. But really, if you're buying a vessel like that, get one with removable plates. Much more friendly to use, much less risk.
Yeah. So like because it's all everything that touches the food and food preparation, right?
That touches the food and it's meant to touch the food, not touches the food incidentally.
Okay, because like.
For example, a can opener also touches the food, but it's not designed to touch food, does not need tefillah.
But what if this one is like, oh, well, someone like I make my own coffee, so I have a machine that like grinds up the beans, but like it just takes the beans from like the size to smaller, and then later on I use something else to make coffee. So there's the bean grinder, but it's also electric.
Yeah, so when it comes to something like that, there's actually a machlekes. That's a kind of vessel where the vessel itself is only a preparatory vessel to use for something that's going to be edible and served. Now, you don't take the grinder and take what the grinder does and eat from there. You take the grinder to reduce particle size to then move it into another machine to make yourself the coffee of your choice. That's a machlekes. So because it's electronic, you can be lenient around it because it's a little bit different. That's not where play suda in the literal sense. It's a machlekes because you don't actually serve food with that.
Why are I'm just curious, like why are all the electric things why aren't they considered like microwave or an oven like?
So microwave is different. Well, microwave, first of all, it's just the tray itself would need to be if anything. You don't have to table the whole machine. And this is also a question which I got recently actually from somebody was on my trip. Do you have to table the racks of a toaster oven? The racks of a toaster oven, the answer is should be tabled because they're designed to put bread inside, or let's say to bake a pizza inside. Then you would remove the racks and table them. But the racks of a large oven, as far as I understand, don't have to be tabled because it's not derech ha'olam to put food directly on them. They're just meant to hold the tray that's going to go in there. The tray itself would need tevilah in a chanami, the actual serving tray, or the baking tray, whatever it is. Yes, but the tray that's the rack that's holding the tray, the sheet pan would not need to be tabled in a large oven. Now, there's a third question. This is getting into interesting discussion. This is like we're going to delve in. If we're already doing it, we're going to do a deep dive. What about those vertical toaster ovens? They have a casing, and you put a piece of bread inside. They're only meant for bread. You put them in vertically, and you press the button, boop, and it sits there for whatever it is, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, and then it gets crispy, pops up, and it's ready. That's a very interesting discussion. I'm going to share it with you. So first of all, when I was a kid, that's all they had. It became more modernized. You have toaster ovens that could do almost everything. A person can live out of a toaster oven. I'm saying really, if you don't have anything else, you can do everything out of a toaster oven, especially with ones that have convection. They have all kinds of fancy things. These didn't exist when I was a kid. I'm not talking about like the dark ages, but it's simple. We just had the personal toasters. And it was also relevant to Shalom Bayis, because if you're running to school in the morning and your sibling wants to also have the bread toasted, you have to make sure, because you can only do two pieces at a time. It wasn't like the toaster ovens that could fit 4 or 6, right? It's more limited capacity. So Rav Moshe Feinstein has a very interesting tshuva on this matter. He says that because the this toaster oven, I'm talking about the vertical toaster, is designed strictly for taking edible food that's ready to serve, to change its properties to make it crispy. So it's really a crisping machine, so to speak. It's like it's grill marks, it's making it delicious. I like toast personally. Some people like it fresh bread. Everyone has their choices, yes. So he says that's not mechuyev tefillah because it's not called klei su'udah. It's just enhancing existingly edible product. However, a lot of opinions don't agree with Rabbi Moshe. So the minhag actually is to be machmer, to toivel it. Now, toiveling that does not have an electronic motherboard. It's similar to the toiveling of the hot water urn. You toivel it, say a kapitel tilim, say the whole. Just kidding. You can always go say tilim. You turn it upside down for 3 days, and then you dry it out. The Jewish people, dry gravity works. That's how that's handled.
They have
But
newer
yes.
ones though that are, they look like iPads, but they look like.
If they have an electronic motherboard, then you cannot toivel.
Okay.
That's for sure. Then you can have to the line had to Rabbi Moshe or someone that gives it to a non-Jew.
Family had one of those, before we became kosher, they had one of those, and it was great, like, we got it from my grandma. She gave this to us because she had had it in her house, and it had worked for ages, and it was all shiny and chrome and polished.
Yeah.
You stick the bread in, and Pop-Tarts, whatever, and it would pop up and stare at whoever was in the kitchen. It was great.
Yeah. Those are like, it's like an iconic,
Yeah,
it's an iconic instrument, an iconic piece of
Is there,
kitchenware. So it's just nostalgic. And it calls you that memory.
is there also a heter, like, let's say with the toaster oven or like the vertical toaster, like if you, like, let's say the regular toaster, you always like put your bread in like tin foil, like you never let the food directly touch it.
Later, if you're never touching the actual shelf, I think you don't have to table the racks. But I know, at least in my home, very often the bread would go directly on the racks.
Yeah.
Or pizza would also. It depends, it comes out crispier that way. It's a better bake. If you're covering the bottom, then you're going to get more of a soggy experience, which is not the whole. You want to get the full experience. You don't want to chas v'shalom diminish the pizza experience or the bread experience. Anyway, that's that. Okay, so we covered that subject at least in somewhat. We opened it up. Let's look at halacha tests.
They make the safer in English.
There is a sefer called Kashrus by Art Scroll by the same author, but it's more of an encyclopedia. It's not a direct translation of this. It's it's like an anthology, so it's more in depth actually. It's a red or orange cover called Kashrus. Rabbi First. You can go to the bookstores; they carry it. Art Scroll. If you want to study it in depth, I would recommend you getting it. It's a very good. It's a good product. Okay, we have a couple of minutes, and I want to just say a story. We're up to halacha. First of all, if you can mark down your notes, please, girls. We're up to halacha tes. I like to tell stories. What can I do? It's part of my DNA. This story happened when I was about 7 years old. My parents were living in New Jersey. And my father's job changed, and he had a job in somewhere near Highland Park, New Jersey, and then he was going to move. And as a result, we were going to be moving to Muncie, Rockland County, to Muncie, New York. So my father put up the house for sale. This is in 1975 or 6, around those years. At that time, houses were selling for $35,000. Today in Granite, you can't even buy a parking space at that place. But anyway, okay, so that's what it was. So this is in Chodesh Shvat time. My father put up the house for sale, and he was getting offers that were not in range. 31,000, 32,000. It's actually a story that's on video. So my father was interviewed about this place. Anyway, so he wrote to the Rebbe because it's a big difference. He was getting like 15% below asking price, a lot of money. It's a lot of money. The Rebbe said, wait till Chodesh Adar, because Chodesh Adar, Bara Mazli, the Torah teaches us, it says in Shulchan Aruch, the Gemara teaches us, that the mazel of the Yidden is very good. The way to sell it till Chodesh Adar was just a month away, because this was in Chodesh Shvat, so my father waited till Adar. I believe this happened in Rosh Chodesh Adar. Someone came along and paid above asking, $3,750, like $2,500 above asking, which was about 7% above the asking price. They went to contract and sold the house. The Rebbe's miracle. So the disparity between the original offers and the final offer that was accepted was very great. We ended up moving to Muncie. and we lived there for 4 years until I moved to Boston. But in Muncie, I want to tell you two other stories. I was there in the 70s, from like 1976 until 79, 75 and a half till 79, 3.5 years. And Friday night, my father used to take me to a shul. There was a Polish Rebbe, his name was Rabbi Weinfeld. He was a survivor of the Holocaust, didn't have any children. This man was a real tzaddik, like the real deal. No, and Friday night, Chodoidi, you felt the kedusha and the simcha of Shabbos. He would sing, and he was dressed in a beautiful Shabbos robe and like a surtuk, a silk, and he just, his face was radiant. And I still remember those moments that to me, that was like the whole Shabbos. That was the Shabbos. Just to be experienced that a 45-minute or an hour davening was very special. That was it. And one other funny memory, little memory. There was a problem with Yidden. There was a problem in the 70s of some Yidden were getting beaten up by some troublemakers. And so what happened was that the police department, Rockland County, they created a police force of policemen, maybe even women. I don't think women were on the force in those days. They were dressed up like Hasidim. They wear long coats. They wore the beaver hats, fake payas and fake beards, and they would wait to get beaten up. That's how they would catch the thugs. So we as kids, we were able to tell who was a real chassid and who was a decoy. We knew this was a decoy. It was just very funny. That was because when you were like living with it, you could, because they as much as they integrated, they didn't know all the little nuances. I guess for some of them they didn't know, but we were able to tell who's who. Anyway, have a wonderful Shabbos, and Mitzvah Hashem will continue next week.
But I'm gonna get their name.
Because I'm trying to think of all the keepers that I work with that are both Shuba, and one of them definitely does live on Carol. The other one, she was like, oh, we always think teachers in the nose from not having that would be Mr. Karnofsky, because he's one of the principals. I think she lives in Carol.
I never even got their name. I know it's like the word. Also, someone told me they were like Paya Horowitz's like cousin. Her, and I was just like, who? And I'm like, I don't even know their name. Yeah, nice to see you.